waking up in a bath of ice. I'm a victim of an organ heist. You know it is true, you know this time you're never gonna get it. But you already stole my heart. Yeah, you ripped it and tore it apart. You know it is.
Welcome to Cutthroat Queens podcast, where all the wingless angels go to after you touch yourself. We are here to take an open and honest look at all things indie horror. My name is Brett Mitchell-Kent, and I am joined by the first human to ever be entirely composed of radishes, Chelsea Pumpkins, and that's it. Our darling Elton Skelter is under the weather, and he's abandoned us.
I miss you, Elton.
We miss you so much, Elton.
We miss you.
That bitch is out of the way. Let's just talk about him.
Your Pride episode was wonderful.
Thank you.
Good job to you and Elton and all of our guests. I'm sorry I couldn't make it.
It was a lot of fun to get to chat with everybody. I've been wanting Ray to be on this for obviously the whole time, and I was so excited to finally get her. And
yes,
it was really neat to get to meet the guys from Slashik.
I got to meet Ray in person.
Yeah, whatever. That's not even. You got to meet a lot of people in person. How was that?
So I went to Stokercon, which was not the sole reason, but part of the reason I couldn't record earlier this month. And it was the most fun. I had such a good time. I want to go back every year. That was my first time. And it was in Pittsburgh this year, which I had never been to. Steel City. And yeah, I met tons of people that we have been talking to online for like the past 3 years in person. And it was wonderful. It felt like summer camp.
So for people that might not know, and I'm sure that most of them do, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably aware. But what is Stokercon?
Stokercon, I believe named for Bram Stoker himself, is a convention held by the Horror Writers Association. Annual convention, horror focused. It seems to really be an event for writers and authors and publishers more so than like horror fans, though I'm sure horror fans would still find some really cool stuff to be a part of. But there's readings, there's panels of people talking about different topics. There's like a whole room full of people selling stuff. There's like even a little film festival, and it's also where they announce the winners of the annual Stoker Awards on the last night of the con.
Yes, that is so exciting. So we knew a few of the nominees, but it's very exciting that Christine Ogle, who is kind of like in our little writing circle, she's in our little writing group. She's probably in a lot of little writing groups, but we're going to claim her for this one.
Yes,
she won for her debut novel, Beulah. And we are so proud of her and so excited for that.
Oh, it was really cool to be there. I mean, to hear all the winners, really. So there's a huge room where they do the announcements, but it's kind of outside like the hotel bar. So a lot of us were kind of just mingling out there and like following the announcements so we could like hang out and chat and like eat dinner together and stuff. So like everybody from our writing circles like was going wild when Beulah got announced. So Christy, we could not be more happy for you. So congratulations. And she just got announced as a Shirley Jackson nominee as well. So
yes, she did. And who else was it that was so hold on, no, I got this. Because it's Kelsey was also announced, and I've talked about that book specifically on here, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because we are luckily going to be able to speak with Chelsea in a couple of Kelsey in a couple of months. You're Chelsea, she's Kelsey, right. In a couple of months. So
yes, congratulations to all the nominees. There's so many good people up for, that were up for the Stokers and that are up for the Jackson Awards too. So love to see it.
Kelsey was for Bound Feet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Kelsey, you for her Shirley Jackson Award is her nomination, whatever.
Nomination, yeah.
Bound Feet, incredible book. I can't gush right now though. So
I'm planning to go to those awards too, so I'll come back and report back from those.
It's so exciting. So if you had to pick, what would be your favorite part of having been at Stoker? I guess maybe besides getting to see all of the people, or was that your answer?
I mean, meeting everybody was like just the most fun. There was a lot of like online like pre-event almost like anxiety of people being like, I'm introverted, I swear I don't hate you, I just might need to recoup, like please come say hi, I swear I don't hate you. Which I totally understand. A lot of writers are introverts. Brett, I feel like you're like me. I am one of the extroverts.
I'm not an introvert.
No, I was just going around being like, hi, I'm Chelsea Pumpkins. Like a total nerd, but I met a ton of people that way. Made some new friends, which was really fun. And then like obviously connected with people that I've known online for years. And we were a few of us were joking, like, I think all these groups of introverts just need like one dedicated extrovert in their friend circle so that we can all meet each other and network. So like for me, talking to people is like, it brings me so much joy. I just love having a drink, laughing, like abandoning small talk and just like getting real and having fun. But the panels were also all great that I attended. I wish I could have gone to more, but you just kind of get busy and caught up. I got to be on a panel, which I was super honored to be asked. So doing that felt like a big accomplishment and it was fun. I was on a panel moderated by Angela Sylvain, and it was about micro and flash fiction. So I got to talk about, I don't know, my expertise, which I don't feel is earned, but I appreciate being asked. So I got to talk about that for like an hour with some other authors. And the dealer's room, which is the room where people were selling books and merch and swag and all that, was also a ton of fun. I was obviously there to sell That's What I Call Horror, but that is not under a big publisher name. So we ended up just like as a group of friends getting a table. So I was at a table with like P.L. Macmillan, Ryan Marie Ketterer, Bridget D. Brave, the Collage Macabre group. We had them on a few episodes ago. Evelyn was there with her book Le Petit Mort. Andrew F. Sullivan was there, Pat Barb. So like all of us had our books at the table and like would take shifts kind of covering it and selling stuff. And like, I don't know, again, as an extrovert, I thought that was fun.
That would be so much fun.
Some people might be horrified, being like, hey, come talk to me and buy stuff. But I had a good time doing that.
Every now and then, very rarely, I get to go to a trade show for work, and I thrive. I love those. All these people coming by, like me, just pitching the nonsense, getting to chat with people, the swag. I love it. Yep. I spent far too much money. I came home and I was like, oh boy, I need to like actually cool it for a bit. So I don't think I had a favorite. All of it was so fun. I had a great time. I believe it's in San Diego next year, right? It is. Yes, they announced that. And I already bought my tickets. So the tickets go up in price as time goes on. So as soon as you listen to this, they will be cheaper than they will be in like 6 months. So I don't know. If you're interested, I highly recommend it. I also plugged our podcast a bunch and it was really fun. Like I remember at least one conversation. I'll give her a shout out, Katrina Caruth. I was sitting down and she just sat with me and was like, hi. And we were just chatting and I was mentioned a podcast and she's like, which podcast? I told her, she's like, I love that podcast. And I was like, oh my God, our first fan. Like it was so fun. But yeah, and talked to other podcasters there. And I don't know, it was just, everything was really cool. You'll love it, Brett. You're coming next year. I'm bringing you with me. Oh, I'm for sure going next year. Yeah. The struggle this year was that it was over Father's Day and it was over my husband's birthday. So it was just, so we couldn't do it. But even if it is over those things next year, it'll be fine. He can deal. So San Diego's a little bit more of a like vacation destination, I would say, than Pittsburgh. Yeah. So you could like maybe convince him to come with you. Like just like bring him along and then be like, okay, so you go have fun and I'm gonna go have fun. Because you don't care about this at all. So yeah, it'll be fun. Buy him a ticket to something he likes to do. Yeah. Oh, speaking of tickets, there was also a Taylor Swift concert at the same time in Pittsburgh, and all of the Swifties were staying at our hotel. So it was this really funny mixture of like everyone dressed in black and in their scary outfits, and all the Swifties like geared up in their in their era's costumes. Like
there was one point where the whole lobby bathroom was taken over by glitter because I'm assuming they couldn't check in yet. So they were all getting ready for the show. And some people I think were like annoyed by it, but I was just highly entertained. And like I would see these little girls in the elevator. I was like, oh my God, which song are you excited about? And it was so cute.
I saw a video online about like there were people on the train, maybe in like New York, one of the cities, and like they were just regular passengers on the train, and then they stopped, and as it was going, you just saw like a line of just hundreds of people waiting to get on the train, and the doors open, and then just all these like Swiftie fans piled in, and it was just standing room only. So maybe we can get Taylor Swift on our show.
Oh yeah, I think that's the next move.
She's indie, right?
Horror, yeah,
indie horror. She fits
Taylor's version. But yeah, highly recommend the event. Like I said before, it felt like summer camp, like just hanging out with friends and like talking nerd talk about writing and reading and all that stuff. So, and publishing, editing, you name it.
Exciting.
Yeah. And another really exciting thing this month is our co-host Elton, who's missing. His debut novel is out, Life Support.
Yes.
And we're really proud of and excited for Elton. And Brett read it already, so you can. God. I haven't read it yet.
No, it's so good. So I actually like, and I wasn't supposed to blurb it because, you know, he's all like, we run the podcast he's together.
Like, you have to love me.
But like after I read it, I was like, I've read a lot of Elton's work. I'm a fan. And this one though, it just hits. It's a slasher, but also a mind fuck. And I can't explain it without giving away too much. But basically the premise of his novel is it starts out in a support group for people that have, unique illnesses, I guess, of the mental variety. Like one person has severe pica. The main character, they call him Dead Man because he doesn't believe that he's alive. He thinks he's a walking corpse. There's a guy that has like a limb that's chaotic, and these are all real illnesses. So he really did his research. There's a gal that just randomly pukes all the time. It's not like a bulimia thing. It's just, it happens. There's a girl that orgasms like at the drop of a hat. She just randomly orgasms. A man with,
I remember there was like a Grey's Anatomy episode about that orgasm issue.
But it doesn't last for very long because it's a slasher. So our lovely little guys,
it's gonna happen.
Get slashed. It's disgusting, but incredible and deep and thought-provoking. And it is out at this moment on Godless, so check it out on Godless, and then it comes out on what month is it? July 7th, on Amazon and everywhere else.
Yes.
Life Support, Elton Skelter.
Go get it. I have to get it. I'm excited. I need to read it. As you know, slowest reader on this podcast. So
yeah,
he knew. He was like, "Are you going to read it in time?" I was like, "Babe, you know I'm not. I love you. I will read it, just not on time."
So for this episode, we get two separate interviews. I was already fortunate enough to sit down with John Durgin. He's the author of Accursed Among Us and Inside the Devil's Nest. And then he's also got some upcoming projects. We got to chat. So stay tuned. That will be coming up next. And then Chelsea, you're going to get to sit down with Matt Seff Barnes, who did the cover work for both of John's novels and just a bunch of other stuff. Insanely talented guy. So you sit down with him tomorrow, right? For this, but from our date here. Alrighty, so coming up next, like we mentioned, we will be speaking with John Durgin and then Matt Seff Barnes.
Waking up in a bath of ice, I'm a victim of an organ heist. You know it is true, you know this time you're never gonna get it. But you've already stole my heart. Yeah, you ripped it and tore it apart.
All right, welcome back. I am joined by John Durgin, the author of Accursed Among Us and Inside the Devil's Nest. Hello, John. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
So we are going to be discussing both of your books and then just a little bit about, your author method. One of the things that's notable about you specifically is, I believe A Cursed Among Us was your debut, correct?
Correct, right.
And you self-published this one.
I did, yes.
Very successfully self-published this one.
Yeah.
It seemed to really take off. I read it, I want to say earlier this year, January maybe.
Okay.
And I see that it has a whole bunch of reviews already, which is insanely good for especially a self-published, any indie level. So what was that like? Self-pubbing your own debut?
And it was a roller coaster. So coming into it, I knew nothing. I know we talked offline a bit about how I had a podcast before. I used to pick the brains of horror authors on the side, just after we'd go off the air, I'd just ask them for advice. And so anything I learned was just from like chit chatting like that, editing, formatting, cover arts, like just the stuff you have to do. Right. So like I got referred to, Seff Barnes, I have my books with me because I self-promote myself all the time. So, oh shoot, I got the blurry background on. So anyways, he did all three of my covers. So I got referred to him by somebody. I went on his website. I found his art amazing. And so I knew who I wanted there. Yeah, I got referred to an editor, formatter, all that. Right. So it's a lot of work, and ultimately I made sure I gave myself 3 months, a random number I came up with, but I gave myself 3 months from when it was released from when I finished writing it to release day, to promote, to get ARC readers. I set up a Goodreads page and did a cover reveal like way ahead of time. Again, I had no idea if I was doing the right thing or not, but my thought was, if I'm going to get advanced readers, they need somewhere to leave reviews, and Amazon doesn't let you leave reviews early, for us small people, right? For indie peeps. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to make sure they can leave a review on Goodreads. And then I'm like, okay, but I want the cover image to pop up every time someone leaves a review, so it gets burned in their head, So I made sure I did a cover reveal nice and early too. And I had almost 50 reviews before release day, which blew me away. And it really kind of just hit the ground running from release day. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I did it right. I didn't know if my sales were average, above average, below average, etc. So I was kind of in the dark on all that initially. But
yeah, it's really impressive, especially for, I'm a big fan of authors taking the reins themselves, self-publishing. I think it's going to be the new normal very soon. And stories like yours show how possible it is. If you put the work out there, you make a good product, people will respond. So having 50 reviews for a debut in the indie market is incredible. So definitely applaud you for that one.
Thanks. And then, when we're looking at, why would I do that, right? Why would I self-publish versus go for indie publishing or traditional publishing? My thought coming in was, it's enough pressure on myself to even know if I can write a damn book. I've never even attempted. I don't have like hidden manuscripts anywhere. Like, this is my first attempt at writing, period. So I didn't want to put that pressure on myself of then trying to shop it and trying to figure out how the heck do I even write a query letter or submit to these publishers. So in my mind, I'm like, if I prove myself, obviously it was a gamble on myself. If I can self-publish this, it does really well. Well, with my next book, then maybe I can look to, working with a publisher and then start to work my way through. And I mean, my dream someday is to be with one of the big fives, be represented, by an agent, see if that happens. But
I mean, even if it's your dream, definitely go for it. But even if it doesn't, you're making yourself a great name in the community. People know who you are. People like your work. Definitely awesome. So for Cursed Among Us specifically, it kind of starts us out with a serial killer and you think it's going to be the typical serial killer slasher fare, but then it just completely goes off in the other direction. It's like a weird hybrid, weird in a good way, sorry, of like a serial killer, paranormal. So when you went into this, was the paranormal storyline the main focus, the serial killer, or did they, were they birthed simultaneously?
I didn't have both ideas at the same time, but I knew going in that I wanted two ideas to come head to head, just like with Devil's Nest. It's mob, like real life horror versus cult supernatural, right? I just, everyone always says everything's already been done in the horror world, all these tropes are overused. So my way of trying to make it unique is to mash some together and make it its own thing. So I knew I wanted to do that, but the idea started with a real life killer, because I don't know if you know this yet, but Newport is actually my hometown growing up. And so it's a real town in New Hampshire, and all those landmarks in the book are real. So the ski jump and everything, all that is actually in the town. There was a serial killer in Newport. And there actually was an Unsolved Mysteries episode based on it. So all that stuff was inspired by real life things. And I knew I wanted to go with something like that, but I didn't want it to just be a standard serial killer in a small town sort of thing. Partly because I didn't want to take advantage of the real thing, but also I'm a Stephen King fan at heart growing up, right? So I always want some of that supernatural type stuff mixed in somewhere. So.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a fine dance. When you're kind of being inspired by true crime, like paying homage to the crime without being offensive to the victims, it's definitely good. So you went with having it centered around younger main characters, but it's not a YA novel. That's, some people would consider that a risk. I think it paid off really well. The way that you wrote the kids was very believable. They had great character arcs. Which one was your favorite to write of the four?
Well, so first of all, that group of kids was my friends growing up, almost down to like some of the names. I did change a couple of the names. Howie was based off me loosely. I mean, I had to make him more interesting because after the first draft, I'm like, man, I was a boring ass kid. So I had to make his home life harder, and like, so as you probably are aware. But I would say Ryan, which is the overweight kid. He was based off one of my best friends, who unfortunately took his own life after high school. So the book overall was kind of a tribute to him. He was a huge horror buff. We used to film horror movies in the woods, so like a lot of that stuff was based in reality. So I knew going into it, I wanted to honor him. And I don't want to spoil his character arc, obviously, but some of that stuff, towards the middle end of the book with him was basically a tribute, so.
Yeah. I'm really sorry to hear that. He was one that I really liked as well. Just he's easy to resonate with because he's kind of the underdog, but not, it's clear pretty early that he's not supposed to be the underdog. He's not going to be the underdog, but it's a great job. And I think that that's an awesome homage to somebody, to not just put them in a story, but put them in a story in an impactful way.
So Ryan, I mean, I changed his name in the book for obvious reasons, but some of the people that know him, that grew up with us, like I actually had someone that I went to school with who wasn't in my group of friends. I didn't even know they knew I had a book. I haven't talked to them since graduation. And they emailed me through my author website and said they were crying reading his character because they were like best friends with him in middle school. And they were just like, you nailed him. Like that is him to a T. Like, I mean, the outfit, the way he talked, like a lot of that stuff, like playing Goldeneye, and like, even though it was like 4 years too old, some of the stuff with his dad, like that was all real. His dad really talked that way and embarrassed the crap out of him, and it was just always the funniest thing seeing it. So
I feel like we had the same childhood because my friends and I, we couldn't afford a camera, so we didn't really film, but we pretended to film ourselves being in Blade movies, and we played Goldeneye. So we should have.
My friend, so Corey in the book is based off my my best friend Corey. His name is actually his name, and he went to film school. He actually edits now, but he was an only child, so his parents would buy him the best tech. So he actually had really nice, like at that time in the 90s, a nice video camera. So we used to rip off Friday the 13th movies all the time and just make awful slashers. So
that's wonderful. I love it. The people that really just fucking love horror, the ones that they're born into it, kept it going throughout their life. I'm the same way, and I'm raising my daughter to be the same way too.
That's awesome.
The best at it. So the ending, right? It does kind of imply that the story might not be over. Is there more coming?
Absolutely. I announced this on my social media. So I self-published Cursed. Crystal Lake Publishing actually bought the rights to it, and they are going to release a sequel next year. So I haven't written it yet. I know what's going to happen in my head, but I just finished my third novel, and I'm writing a novella or novelette now, and then I'm going to be writing that after. So it'll be coming out sometime next year. But they also signed the prequel, so there's going to be a prequel which dives more into the coven in the 70s and the original murders, and then the sequel, which will essentially pick up pretty much right after the scenes of the first book. So
I don't know which one I'm more excited about. I'm really excited to see more of the weird little scene that we had in the beginning. I want more of their story, but I also want more of the boys. So
just, again, not spoiling too much, because that's probably 2 years down the line when I'll write the prequel. But I picture that following Jessica and her husband as they come into Newport and get involved with this coven, and then leading up through the possession and the original murders and all that.
So exciting.
Yeah, but the sequel I'm pretty excited about, because I didn't realize, and I don't want to overdo the nostalgia stuff in the book, because a lot of what people like about Cursed is that it was like a fine balance. I didn't just beat you in the face with nostalgia every other page. So I don't want to go too far overboard, but I also am looking forward to adding some more that I didn't get into the first book. And one of the characters in the first book, Bethany, had kind of a very minor role, but she's obviously going to be a bigger part of book 2. So it'll be cool to see the 90s nostalgia from a girl's point of view too. So, and I have some, when I'm coming up with a book idea, I try to come up with like a bunch of, like, in my mind, like a blockbuster scene in like a horror movie, right? Like this big act, like the finale of Cursed, like, not spoiling anything, but it's pretty not over the top, but action packed and just like
dynamic,
tension, right?
Yeah.
So like I try to think of scenes throughout the book to keep the pace going. And I have some scenes for locations in Newport that I didn't really use much of that I think will be pretty creepy and pretty badass. So I'm excited about right now.
Wonderful. I'm excited about it too. And so you went from your Cursed Among Us, and then your most recent one. Well, I can't say most recent because you have your collection, but the novel that came out after that was Inside the Devil's Nest from D&T Publishing, and it has that amazing cover that Seff Barnes did. I love that cover. And so this is another one that you took a couple different concepts. You obviously have your aesthetic. We'll dive into that in a couple seconds, but the one thing about this one is that the lore in it was really neat. Is that just you, or were you inspired by something else with the?
It was mostly me, but I can't take all the credit because I did. So just to kind of give you some background to the book is I knew I wanted it to be at a haunted campground where a cult used to reside. So I knew that part of it. And then I really, like I said, I like to mash up, certain aspects. And I was like, how can I get them there in an interesting way besides, we're just going on vacation? Like I want like tension from both sides, So I was writing the first draft, and I get them to the campground, and I had this supernatural cult, which a couple of the reviews were calling them like blood-sucking water vamps, and I'm like, that's kind of badass, actually. I like that because that makes them sound pretty cool. But so I had this whole idea, but I'm like, I kept saying that they worship the god below, and I didn't have a name, and I'm like, there's got to be like some type of water spirit or demon or something that I can. So I started researching, and Vaginoi, which is who they worship, this cult, is a real folklore story around the world, and it's not a god or anything, but the way I kind of presented him is like almost like this eldritch type god, but the folklore is really cool with it. It's different in different countries, but the idea is this evil water spirit convinces, like it barters with humans, but it kills them. Basically, it drowns them in the water, and it just really it lined up perfect for my story. It added more depth to why they were what they were. They weren't just worshiping some nameless thing, and I did take some liberty with that folklore, but it definitely added to it. So
yeah, that's neat. I like it there's a lot of cult stories, but surprisingly, a lot of those cult stories don't actually like end with them having a real god, that they're actually worshiping something. So, sorry, I hope that's not spoiler. That's not spoiler, right?
No, it's not. Okay. The prologue pretty much has.
That's what I was thinking. So. It's pretty obvious in the beginning that it's something's happening. So one of your characters, the descent into madness, is one of the key pieces of the book. It's very Shining-esque. It was done very well. There was very clear indicators in the beginning because it mentioned their personality traits, and then if it fell into that. So did you have to do anything to get into that specific mindset in the more tyrannical pieces of it?
Not mentally myself, but I did watch a lot of the Shining, Amityville, stuff like that, just to see their slow descent into the craziness, because The Shining's, weirdly enough, because Stephen King hates the movie, The Shining is one of my favorite movies of all time, and the novel is my favorite novel of all time. I love them both, even though there are some key huge differences. But so a lot of the book was, obviously his character arc was pretty heavily inspired by Jack Torrance, to the point where there's a scene towards the end there where it's definitely paying tribute to that, as you're probably aware. I didn't and at the same, when I was doing that, I'm like, I don't want to go too much in copying, like not copying, but imitating that, but I felt like I made it different enough so that it didn't feel like I was basically taking Jack Torrance, putting him at some campground, but
yeah, you could tell that the homage is there to those specific works, but a lot of fans of horror want that. I want that in my modern horror, is the authors calling back to the stuff that we grew up with. So that's something I appreciate, and I regard my opinion pretty highly. So we're good.
All right. It's going to be really hard for me to not have Stephen King inspire the stuff I write, because that's what from like 8th grade on. He's all I read up until college. I didn't even know other horror authors. I tried Dean Koontz and didn't like him. And then, sorry if he's watching.
I doubt it.
But I didn't find indie horror till way later. So King was a huge inspiration. It was a huge inspiration to Cursed Among Us. A lot of people say it's like Stranger Things. I'm like, yeah, kind of, but that's not. It is what inspired me, not Stranger Things. But obviously, it inspired Stranger Things too. So it kind of goes hand in hand. But
I think that Stephen King, I know that he's somebody that people love to hate as well. But I feel like a lot of that might be jealousy because he's so successful. But he's somebody that I feel like a lot of us authors and readers look up to, because he really left his mark on our genre.
Especially from the 80s, 90s stuff. The stuff like the new stuff. I like it, but like it's those classic stories that just bring you back. And and that doesn't mean like I think they're perfect by any means. I mean, The Shining, it's like pretty perfect in my mind, but like there's stuff like Salem's Lot. There's a lot that I would change about that, even though I love the concept of it. I do want to write a small town vampire novel sometimes, so I care a lot about like fast paced. I don't want flop. I want to try to keep it going as best I can. So, but I'm going off on a tangent now. Sorry, we were talking about the mindset for Devil's Nest. You know, I know, like talking to Nick Roberts, author of The Exorcist House, when he writes his stuff, like he just finished writing his next novel, and he said that he puts himself in that mindset. Like if it's a depressed character, he tries to feel that way, or angry. Like, man, I could not do that. I literally shut my laptop and go down and just have a drink and watch something with my wife after I read someone getting their head cut off. You know, I don't try to let it get into my head too much. So.
That's very interesting. As a writer, I'm more aligned with Nick's. I like to really drag myself into the emotion. It's pretty taxing though. So maybe that's why you're pretty prolific, and I barely write ever get anything done.
I'm sure that it would add more character depth, you know, because you're like thinking certain thoughts. And I mean, with Inside the Devil's Nest, like I wouldn't want to get that into. I wouldn't want to think like Anthony, you know. But
I don't feel like yours is missing character depth though. So
well, that's good.
Whatever you're doing is working.
All right.
So how was the process between self-publishing your first novel and working with D&T Publishing, which is a great indie press? It's very author focused, so I know that it's probably not going to be quite as much of a leap as some other presses, but yeah, what was the contrast for that?
Honestly, there wasn't too much, because Dawn is super easy to work with, so there's not a lot of restraints on me. And in all honesty, I didn't know if I was going to self-publish it initially. I had already bought the cover art. You know, I had already had my editor, which not everyone does this. I want it to be the best it can be, so even when I get picked up by a publisher, I still pay my editor to edit it first, because in my mind, well, I'm like, okay, well then I'm getting a second editor because they're going to have their editor do it. That's how I view it. Whereas a lot of people are like, no, that's what they're there for. You know, they're taking your book, they're taking your royalties. Like, let them pay for the editor. I'm like, yeah, but then who knows if it's the best product? You know, because I could get a second set of eyes on it now. So she's been super easy to work with. You know, I don't think she's ever said no to anything I've asked. So, you know, I asked if I could send ARCs out, and I was worried about that because with Cursed, I sent a ton of ARCs out, ebook ARCs, you know, to people, because I wanted reviews, I wanted people talking about it. And with a publisher, I didn't know, you know, if that'd be okay or not. You know, so, and they typically use, you know, specific cover artists. I already had the cover. She was completely cool with me using my cover. I mean, it's an amazing cover, so I'm just glad she did. But yeah, I mean, it hasn't been too much different. I will say one thing that is really tough for me is with Cursed. I'm addicted to refreshing KDP, you know, throughout the day to see how it's doing. I can't do that with Devil's Nest because it's not under my name, you know, it's under D&T, so I can't see intraday like how it's doing. And I don't want to bug her. She has a million authors to worry about, so I'm not sitting there messaging her every other day saying, "Hey, how are we doing?" You know, but so that's the main difference, honestly, is just seeing how it's doing. You know, I mean, that's it's really, she's been super easy to work with. You know, she's got my book in different areas than I would have myself, right? Like we had it on Godless, you know, as an early exclusive. I didn't use them on my own. I didn't really even know how to go about that. You know, she has specific reviewers that read D&T books specifically. So I picked up, you know, some more audience from that as well. So stuff like that's different, but I haven't felt any pressure or stress or anything working with D&T. So it's been good.
Awesome. And then, so now we'll have to get you back on here and say, what's the difference between self-published versus, a D&T versus Crystal Lake versus your fourth book, hopefully picked up. So we'll have to circle back. But it can be like Billie Eilish, where she goes back every year to talk about her career as it grows.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell, I don't even mind, I have announced this, so it's not, saying anything I'm not supposed to say, but the novel I just finished got picked up by Darklit Press. So, which Andrew, who owns Darklit, published my first ever short story. So it's kind of cool to come back full circle and work with them too. So I'm pretty excited. And that book, the beta readers have really liked it. So I'm excited. It's with my editor right now. So I'm like, it's been with him for a week. He said 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm sitting here every day, just like, okay, like ready to see this thing, but.
Oh, I'm excited to see it. Will you be able to use Matt for that again, or do you not know yet?
Not for that. Well, I mean, I think if I pushed Andrew again, is another one of those publishers that's really flexible and super cool about stuff. So I think he would have. Actually, I know he would have. But they have a cover artist that they typically go to first. And I met her at AuthorCon, and we started chatting about the cover, and we got some pretty cool ideas. So I'm excited to see what she does for it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So we touched on it a little bit, but this might lead into what you were just talking about, but you write a lot that just grabs elements. This is a compliment, okay, but it's like out of a hat. It's just 3 things. It reminds me of a board game that I played, it's called Smash Up, where it's like 2 decks, like fairies and vampires, and then just mash them together.
Yeah.
And I love that. So what else have you got up your sleeves for the future? What other random themes do you have floating in the ether?
Well, honestly, I'll probably do that with every book I write, where I mash stuff together like that. So to your point, Devil's Nest, in my mind, in the way I pitched this to D&T, was The Shining meets Ozark. Because I love the Ozark show on Netflix, and that's family pretty much kind of on the run. I mean, they end up working with I don't know if you watched Ozark or not, but they end up working with a drug family, a drug cartel, laundering their money and stuff, and they're so anyways, the 2 ideas were kind of like coming head to head there and trying to come up with a cool story around it. The book I just finished was inspired initially by, I took Neil Gaiman's masterclass when I was trying to like fill my brain with knowledge, and he was talking about how you could take any story and just kind of turn it upside down and make it something completely different. Like how he talked about how Snow White, if you just changed a couple key things, would be a horror story. And then, so it got me thinking, it was an exercise he talked about, like come up with, take a traditional fairy tale, and just make some changes and try to turn it into horror. And my daughter at the time was obsessed with Tangled, the Rapunzel story. So my next novel is called Kosa, which is Croatian for hair. So it's a nod to Rapunzel, but it's not a fairy tale or like medieval type time. She's not in a tower, but I pitched it to Darklit as Rapunzel meets Room, which I don't know if you ever saw that movie or read that book.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Dark. So Rapunzel meets Room meets Drag Me to Hell is how I pitched it to them. And it's modern times, but an evil Croatian witch ends up abducting this baby who from this couple that tried to steal from her. And I mean, I won't give too much away, obviously, but I think you can probably guess, right? Like the baby is very important to her, so she can't kill her or anything. She needs her. So it follows this baby. It was written in 4 parts. So part 2 is her when she's like 6 years old. Part 3 is when she is 16, and so it just jumps ahead to really, I wanted to get in the head of kind of like Room, where that's her whole world. So like being in this house and following mother's rules is like, that's her life. She doesn't know any different. So the stuff that this witch teaches her is normal to her.
This is excellent. I'm so excited for this one. Oh
yeah.
okay.
I'm the beta readers we're really happy with it. I'm so excited. I want it to come out now, but it's probably I think it's Q1 of 2024. Because I begged Andrew to put it up for AuthorCon next year. So
I'm so excited. The one thing I wanted to talk about for this one is, it's Father's Day this month. Happy Father's Day, by the way. It's late. I know it's like
thanks.
weeks away, but how would you say being a parent impacts your writing, if it does? It might not, but if it does.
Huge. Like every story I write, it seems like it involves some type of parental relationship, right? I often beat up myself, because I'm like, why didn't I, I've always wanted to write, and I didn't really pick up a keyboard until the pandemic. I'm like, why wouldn't I have started when I was younger? And then think, well, what the hell would I have to say when I'm 20? Hey, this is a character that has a terrible credit score, and drops out of college. Like, what? I don't, what would I write about? So now I have a 9 and 5-year-old, and obviously horror to someone that's a parent is something happening to the kids, or a parent protecting their kids, stuff like that, right? So Cursed, involves kids and relationship dynamics with their parents. Obviously a Devil's Nest even more so, because it's a dad trying to save his family and doing what he thinks is right to do. Kosa, the book I just finished, right? I mean, that's about a child and not really having a parent, but following specific rules and all that. So it's huge. I don't even know how, even my short stories, it's hard for me to write without having some dynamic there involving that, because that's, they say write what and obviously that's my life every day right now. So it's hard not to do something with that. So
I definitely agree. I parent myself, the people know it becomes such an integral part of you and your soul. And like you said, the biggest fear is the kids. So, tap into it. Tap into it.
Like
Make something great.
Some people be like, how can you, and I'm not like, I'm not an extreme or splatterpunk author necessarily, right? So like, I'm not getting too specific with things happening to them, but things do happen to kids in my stories. And, some people be like, how can you do that? I'm like, that's my fear. That's what I'm writing, is I'm not doing it because I'm like, oh, like machete to a 6-year-old, that's not, it's not like that. It's like, that's what scares me. So
absolutely. We had Ruth Anna on here several episodes back, and she writes a lot that is, extreme horror focused on kids, and that's her catharsis, is getting that out, helps her get it out of her mind, so she's not worried about it.
Yeah. And she goes much harder than I do with that stuff, so I can only imagine, but it's the same mindset. We just obviously do it in a different way, but like, yeah, I mean, that's if someone asked me what scared me beyond, well, my collection, I mean, there's certain things in there that I leaned on that scared me that don't have to do with kids, but the biggest thing would be if anything ever happened to them, and protecting them. So
it's enough to bring a tear to your eye. So sweet. This is the Cutthroat Queens. It's not supposed to be sweet. So where can our listeners find you if they're not familiar with you? What are your socials? Do you have a website?
I do. Yeah. And I sell, I have a merch store through my website. So I sell signed bundles and hoodies and t-shirts and stuff. So johndurginauthor.com. It's my website. You can find me on Facebook. John Durgin author is my Facebook page, my author page. I suggest following that versus friending me, only because I post most of my author stuff on the author page now. And then on Instagram, it's at Durgin Pencil Drawings, which if you're wondering where the hell does that name come from, before I started writing, I got back into art, and I opened an Etsy shop to sell like prints of my pencil drawings. So I switched my Instagram name to that, and then it was posted everywhere for my author stuff. So I couldn't change it at that point, because all my books say it. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick with it now. And then, and you're going to kill me because you told me to get this ready, and I have drawn a blank on my Twitter. So Twitter is at jdurgin1084. And then TikTok, which I'm starting to try to grow a bit, is at @JohnDurgin_author. So
TikTok. The last several people we've talked to are trying to get the TikTok going, and I know I need to. Yeah, it's so intimidating.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of those, like, or I shouldn't say a lot of, I haven't done any of those, me holding the phone up, like filming myself talk TikTok videos like a lot of the authors do. I try to do, like, I made this like quick mini book trailer for Sleeping in the Fire, my collection, yesterday, and posted it. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing on TikTok either, if it works, and then I look and I'm like, well, what the hell? I have almost 700 views on that one, and I only have a couple hundred followers. So, and then I have some videos of like, 1,200 views, and I'm like, what? Maybe I'm doing something right. I don't know, but I'm just like spitballing. I have no freaking clue what I'm doing. So, but I view them all as different sources of waste to like Twitter. I don't really, to me, that's more networking with other authors and publishers and stuff. I don't expect many fans or whatnot to be on there. It's mostly my Facebook author page and Instagram for that stuff.
So I am very excited that we got to chat. I have been a fan of your work since I got introduced to it earlier this year. Was very excited to talk to you. Very excited to keep watching your career grow. We're going to try that Billie Eilish thing. Don't hold me to it because I am very unreliable. Well, let's try it. So thank you for joining us today, or joining me.
Thanks.
It's me. Like I say us.
You and me, it's us, right? Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I miss doing the podcast gig, so it's cool when I get to come on as a guest. And obviously, when you're a host, you can't really talk about yourself too much, right? So I used to try my best, but again, I ramble a lot, so I still would talk about stuff when I'm like, yeah, you're talking to Brian Keene, like, no one cares about your book, shut up, yeah, but thanks for having me. It was fun.
Waking up in a bath of ice, I'm a victim of an organ heist. You know it is true, you know this time you're never gonna get it. But you already stole my heart. Yeah, you ripped it and tore it apart.
All right, we are back, and I am here today talking to Matt Seff Barnes. He is a bloke from England, and he is a cover artist and illustrator. You've probably seen his work floating around Twitter or Instagram. At least that's where I got to know him. So we're really excited to get to chat today about illustrating. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And I am indeed a bloke from England, mate. Mate, geezer.
I already warned Matt that I might slip into an accent just for fun today.
That's not bad. I don't mind any accurate renditions. I'd be pretty impressed, actually. I think you should actually do the whole thing in a British accent.
I can't promise it will stay accurate the whole time, but we can do our best.
I'll probably get distracted.
It's so good to have you here. Really excited to chat with you today. And yeah, I guess like just diving in. So you do commissions and pre-mades, is that right?
Indeed, I do. Yeah. That's the main crux of the business. More so commissions. I get less and less time to do pre-mades now, but pre-mades are always fun because you can just go like hog wild on them. You can do pretty much whatever you want. So they're always good just to sort of show off your own tastes, if you like.
That is fun. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what the process is like for a commission?
Yeah. Well, usually it starts with an email, essentially, or I'll be contacted through social media via a DM or something, and you sort of introduce ourselves, etc. I think the general purpose at this stage is to just try and find out what the book's about. So ideally, at first, I'd like to have a blurb, or maybe if the client themselves want to explain what the book's about, etc. And then there's always that sort of introductory element, and then I think you decide if if it's a good fit for you, and if they're also a good fit. So once that's been decided, you kind of just book them in, and then when that time approaches, about a week before, around about a week before, I'm due to actually start work on that. What I'll do is I'll start gathering like mood boards. I'll just scan the internet and different places. Pinterest is very, very good for sort of collating art, and I'll create a specific board for that particular piece. And this will be basically the stimulus for ideas to sort of start off, get going. Once that's done, I think I have a sort of decent outline of a concept, and assuming I have the artistic freedom to do so, I'll then contact the author again and say, hey, what do you think of this concept? And then if he digs it, we go forward. And usually I'll send an early sort of work in progress just so we're on the same page, and instead of sort of getting like 50% into a job and he sees it or she sees it and they're just like, yeah, that's not working, you know? I think early on you need to show the concept, even as rough as it can look, as long as you can see actually what the idea is.
That makes sense. Do you get contacted mostly by authors, or like, is there ever like a publisher or like a publicist or anything that, like, who normally is your clientele?
I'd say the large majority is probably independent authors, self-published. But it has become much, much more this year in particular, where I'm getting sort of publishing houses sort of contacting me. So it that balance is sort of, it's kind of actually more 70-30 in favor of indies to actually publishing houses, but the publishing houses have definitely been much more apparent recently, which is nice.
You mentioned fit when you're like kind of getting to know the person making the commission request. What does that look like? Like, have you ever said no? And like, and if you don't mind, why, what would be some of the reasons?
As an artist, I think you like as much artistic freedom as you can get, to be honest, but you've got to understand that obviously, you know, authors are also creative people and have certain visions or certain scenes in their book they might want replicated for a cover or something. And that's fine. But sometimes you'll get a client that will come to you and it's just utter chaos of a concept. There was this one guy, funny enough, it actually wasn't horror, but I'm not sure what it was because I didn't really understand what he was going on about.
It was horrific.
Yeah, it was fucking horrific. It was just this description. I don't even remember what it was. It was just words, and it was just like, there's a dome over here, and I want this over here. And there's like, by the sounds of it, there was like 600 people in this book, and I was just thinking, yeah, you don't have to have them all on the front cover. That's you just have to create a feel. And I was, you know, and this guy was just adamant that he had to have this, and I just said, look, I'm sorry, I can't. I don't think I'm capable of creating your vision for you. It was just absolutely crazy. And he actually did say, to be fair, by that he'd actually had a few other cover designers say no. So
oh wow.
I was trying to politely, you know, divert him to maybe something a bit different, but he was kind of headstrong about it, which is fair enough. So I just said, looks like you know, might be sort of better off looking somewhere else. And that was it really. But that's really the only ones I turned down. Or if I'm too busy, I've had to turn down work sometimes.
That makes sense. I applaud you for taking so much indie work too, because, you know, sometimes self-published authors can have a hard time getting noticed in, you know, it's a pretty saturated field of work out there, and your covers are amazing. So it's awesome that they get to have something so eye-catching. And hopefully that gets them some more readership.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I love, I'm quite a big fan of Twitter, and I've only, funnily enough, I know a lot of people think it's not great, but in the last sort of year, I've really sort of paid more attention to it. I've had an account for years, but I'd never really used it. And then I sort of discovered the horror community on there, and it's fantastic. It's just so supportive. Everyone's trying to help each other. Everyone's sharing each other's stuff. Everyone's giving encouragement. You know, when people are down or not feeling like they're at their best or writing their best, there's always people there picking other people up. And yeah, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome that you work with so many self-published authors and help get them noticed, because your covers are very eye-catching.
It's very easy to work in that environment because, like I say, the support's there. And even the authors themselves, even when I've done something that's not necessary for them, that they'll still share your work because you've developed a good relationship with them. And like, I've literally found a very, very high percentage of people on there just so easy to work with and get on with. It's just such a good place, I find personally. That whole community is phenomenal. Definitely
a fan of the community. I know Twitter has its problems, as does, I think, probably any kind of social media platform, but there is definitely a subset of people that are just truly wonderful there. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it might be the same way across much social media. I know Twitter seems to get a lot of the attention for that sort of thing, but yeah, I agree that community is wonderfully supportive. And I know there's like, it's full of arseholes as well in other areas, and there's probably arsehole artists and authors as well, but
I don't tend to see them. I just tend to see
Well,
a
good.
really big community. Yeah, no, I don't tend to see that. I mean, you get these odd little things that kick off with, people sending pictures to one another or whatever, those kind of things. And it's been like a member of the writing community. Something happened recently, but I just sort of steer clear of all that,
There you go. I want to live in Seff Barnes' Twitter world.
Yeah, come and hang out in my
pleasant.
world. Come and hang out in my world. I'll add you on Twitter. How's that? And
I
then-
just followed you actually. But what's funny is I didn't know I wasn't following you yet because I see your stuff pop up on my timeline all the time. So I assumed that I was already following you. I saw your pre-made for Elevator. It's so awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that was just something I was working on in between commissions. I did this elevator piece before and I thought it was all right, but it didn't really hit. And I just thought, I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to use the sort of elevator as the concept and tentacles and stuff. And I just painted them differently this time and changed the whole tonal range of it and stuff. But yeah, I think it seemed to work out quite well, actually. So I was quite pleased with that. But I think it'd work as a movie poster as well, to be fair.
Yeah. And so for our listeners, before we were recording, we were talking a little bit about music and we're talking about the Stranger Things score. And I look at this and now that you said you listened to that, I'm like, you must have been listening to that score when you were drawing this.
Oh, how did you guess? Yeah.
It has the vibe. Yes.
It's got the vibe. It
totally does. It's cool.
Those lovely Stranger Things vibes.
Do you ever hear from writers who like use your pre-mades as prompts? If I looked at this Elevator poster and then I'm like, ooh, that gives me an idea to write a story, like versus having something ready looking for a pre-made. I wonder if anybody kind of uses your art as a prompt to write something new.
Yes, yeah, that has happened. In fact, this what happened? Was it this last year or the year before? I was contacted by a lady who saw this pre-made and she literally bought the pre-made before she'd finished writing the story.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and she's like, it would just work. But on the other side of it, like you say, that literally it's gone from no story, then yeah. There's been a few people that have said to me, that's given me a fantastic idea. Can I get this from you? So yeah, that happens. I think any sort of strong image, it's I suppose the way I take inspiration as well. You can see another piece of art that can inspire you to think of something else. And I presume it works like that for writers. If there's something that strikes them, obviously I'm not being a writer, but obviously maybe it sort of sets a little detonator off and they're just like, I can do this could be this and this could be this, they can work on just something like an image and then make a story out of it somehow, which is obviously
it's such a neat like form of collaboration between artist and writer. And I know we're way off the list we sent, so thank you for going on that journey with me.
No problem at all. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. But Elevator is quite cool actually. Yeah, it's a bit different. So it was one of those where I got to really sort of just do what I wanted to do,
Did you sell that one yet?
I haven't, no, which I was surprised.
Well, let's get this everyone listening to this podcast, go check out that cover, write a story, and then buy it.
That sounds like an excellent plan. And Chelsea isn't getting 10%, by the way.
I don't make any money. So I spied on your website that you are self-taught. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about your art background in general?
I've always loved sort of art on books and movie posters and covers, DVDs, etc., Blu-rays. That's always been my thing. And for some reason, I used to walk past the cinema as a child and I always used to stop at it. And I always used to look at the different posters, but I never had the incentive from it to actually create art until later on. Mm-hmm. And basically, I just decided to just give Photoshop a try, which was about 15 years ago now. Oh, wow. And I decided to give it a try and I was just messing around with it. I was doing stupid things like I was cutting off pictures, cutting off my head, not literally, obviously. I was cutting off like pictures of my head and just sticking them on movies just to take the piss and make people laugh sort of thing and just trying to make it look real like I was in the movie. And that was literally how my art career started. And then I started taking it more seriously. I started buying books, studying videos. I did one or two sort of online courses. And then I just practiced. And I know it sounds quite an obvious thing to say, practice. But honest to God, that's just the way I went. And obviously studying as well. It's like I'll look at people that I looked up to and their artwork and I'll try and figure out obviously how they got to that effect or how they got to this effect. And then
Mm.
the more you learn the software, the more you realize how these things might be achieved. So it's literally just a case of playing with Photoshop 15 years ago and then thinking one day, I can make a cover, I can make a poster, and just practicing. But I didn't actually get into publishing on a sort of professional level till about maybe 3 years ago-ish.
Okay. Like in the midst of like shutdown and stuff, or?
Yeah, actually a little bit before maybe.
Nice.
But I was only getting like the odd job at that point. And then I actually started out sort of doing post-apocalyptic stuff. Not
Irony.
by yeah. Well, not
Did you
by,
predict this, Matt? Get out of here. You're fired.
yeah, but no, but I didn't sort of get any horror breaks till sort of about a year later, and then my business seemed to go very, very quickly, year on year. To now, it's like obviously my profession and stuff. But lucky enough to be able to do that. But yeah, the actual background itself was basically me just sat in a room with Photoshop and no friends, and just playing with all the different buttons to see what they did, and then draw a bit, then see what that does, then draw a bit. And then it's gaining the confidence to actually put your work out there, because I don't want people telling me it's really good when it's shit. You know,
That is. I understand that.
yeah. I want people to say no, that's shit, and then I can go back and go, okay, well I'll make it good. I sort of thrive off that. I don't, a lot of people say, no, it's great. I do like the proper feedback, and I was getting a lot of that, and I had a pretty supportive network around me of other artists at the time. And they were being very honest with me, and you need to improve this or your lighting, etc., etc. And literally, it was just practicing all those things and all those disciplines over and over. And then I had the confidence to put my work out there. Started getting some feedback, and I thought, how can I make money out of this? And
now it's what you do full time?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Not everyone can do that. Someone really be proud of.
Oh, no, thank you very much. Thank you. So I just literally went for it and just kept making out, kept trying to improve, giving it to the right people to give me the right feedback. And then I put myself in the market. I started posting in book cover groups on Facebook, and I got pretty good traction straight away, I must admit.
Awesome.
And it went from there. Basically. I just, I promote on all the different social networks, and I've been lucky enough to, build a really nice client base. So yeah, that's the very uninteresting art background. I'd like to say I was some hobo living somewhere, and I had a paintbrush and just painting random stuff on the street, and there was some romantic story, but it isn't. It was just me in a room with a computer.
Listen, Matt, we're not supposed to tell the listeners that this isn't an interesting story. We're making it interesting.
I'm doing my best. I really am. This is nothing to tell you on that side.
No, I think a lot of people will find inspiration in that. Like, you don't need to go to school. You don't need a degree. Like, this is something if you put in the time and you have the interest, you can, make something of it. Okay, I was going to ask if you had, like you said, you were doing some stuff on your own. You found a community. There were some books and videos and classes. Like, are there like one or two like top resources that you would recommend for somebody trying to teach themselves?
I just went to YouTube and Googled it all that way. And
cool.
It was literally, it's as simple as that. There were enough. I mean, now you see a lot of things like speed art on there, which is basically a process and artwork being put together, but sped up through video, just basically filming someone's screen doing it, and then the speeding up. So you can't necessarily always learn off those videos, but there are ones out there that are giving good tutorials, and it's just picking up the basics, really. There was one that's no longer going now. I used to follow was called Surreal PSD.
Was that a YouTube channel?
No, well, there wasn't actually a YouTube channel. No, it was just a course that was out there. There was a website and a course, but I got kind of friendly with the founder, CEO. Oh, nice. And so we've been sort of friends now for about 10 years due to this. And he sort of then turned that into a thing called photomanipulation.com, which is a channel on YouTube, which is, I'd say, probably the best channel. Excuse me. The best channel out there if you really want to learn Photoshop. It's really good, incisive lessons. They teach you every aspect of art, and in terms of color theory, lighting, everything, just everything. Cool. So photomanipulation.com. If you want to learn, photomanipulation.com on YouTube is the place to go. really very
Okay.
good. But, yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily have to go out and pay for a course. You know, there's enough resources out there on YouTube, and with a bit of sort of patience and typing the right keywords, and you can find everything you need to learn to do it. You really can.
So I was kind of curious, like, why horror?
Because I love horror.
All right, fine. Good answer.
That's all there is to it. I've always loved horror. I love horror movies. I love horror books, horror, everything. Yeah, I mean, you know, I watch other movies, but if I was looking at my Blu-ray collection now, which I am doing, it's probably like 85% horror and there's like 400 Blu-rays. So
Yeah, I feel that. Whenever we open Netflix, it's directly to the horror list.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I just love horror. I love the creepy stuff, and you know, it has it just has much more resonance with me than anything else. When I make horror artwork, I'm just really happy.
Good. What makes a good horror book cover, in your opinion? In your expert opinion?
I think basically just capturing the mood and theme, and making sure that it's a balance, isn't it? It's got to be horror enough to suggest it's horror, but you don't want to be over the top as to put people off. You know what I mean? It's like, I've had a lot of people come to me with ideas and say, I want this, this, and this, and this. And I'm thinking, yeah, you wouldn't be able to put that on a sort of bookshelf. You know, it's like, there's only I think Amazon have certain reservations on certain graphic levels of covers they have. So there's restrictions in that area. But I think the most important thing is just capturing a theme or something key from the book, that it's more about what you could allude to and giving the direct idea of what the book necessarily is. That's the way I feel about it. I don't think you have to tell the entire story on the book. And sometimes I do get clients come to me like that, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I think I want to put this on and this on and this on. And now I'm looking at that and going, well, compositionally, that's awful. That's not going to work. It's just no, but this is the thing. A lot of the artwork is like, you got to look at the composition first, because the aim of that is to draw the eye to the image. And if you got everything going on in different places and the typography is unbalanced and things like that, you know, it can look a mess and people won't even know what they're looking at half the time. So, but as for a horror cover, I think you've definitely got to obviously catch the fact that it's horror, but you don't need to be down the throat with it. You know, it's more about catching a mood and just taking something from the story itself that's vivid enough to make something that would make a vivid cover, if that makes sense.
Do you ever have trouble just having like a blurb or a summary? Like, if do you ever like kind of miss the mood because you didn't get enough of the content of the thing you're designing for?
If I find I'm struggling, I'll just go back to the author and I'll try, you know, create an open as dialogue as possible and just say, look, maybe you can tell me something about a character, or maybe you can tell me a few descriptions of some scenes in the book that are quite key to the story, or certainly, you know, quite significant. And if there's like a struggle in that way, you can always find something else, or there's like a key element or a key story point that you can work into the cover or something like that. So there's always a solution when you've got something as broad as a story to work with. I mean, there's things that you can take from it, and you know, you give yourself a lot of options. But sometimes they just come to you straight away, you know. Sometimes off the title, it's kind of like you said earlier about if an author or someone or a publishing house has come to me and said, you know, is this cover available? Because I want to write a story for it. Mm-hmm. It works both ways. You can see a title sometimes, and I can think, I know what I'm going to do for that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and that is really cool. And then obviously I'll discuss that with the client, and if they're happy with that, then those are the sort of jobs you want. You know, you've got the idea straight away, and then you can just look forward to just getting on with it. But I still think it's important to create the mood boards, even though they're usually used as a device to sort of create ideas. I still think it's quite important to get those just to keep, you know, just to keep the mood. It's basically those mood boards are moods, you know, and also, you know, by seeing different artists do different things on those mood boards, it gives you ideas for different approaches, not to directly steal, obviously, like, oh, I'll just take that idea and do that. You know, it's kind of like, oh, I like a bit of that. Oh, this good after, and that's interesting.
Do you get work in other genres outside of horror?
Not much. I've done some dark fantasy, which I don't mind.
Are there like different elements you need to consider when you're doing something more fantastical?
I think obviously I'm more just naturally, I'll be more up on what's going on in the horror genre. So in terms of if I'm asked to do it like a dark fantasy or maybe a post-apoc one or something, it'd be a case of there's probably a bit more groundwork to do just to know what's going in the market and what's happening in the market. So I'll go and look at a load of like posters and art and maybe other book covers and seeing what's working at the moment, right down to color tones, anything.
Wow.
Anything you can take from that that's consistent, that's been successful, you can adapt to your own style, sort of thing. So that's what I would tend to do. I think it'd just be a case of a lot more sort of groundwork, whereas horror, I just seem to,
Already have the pulse on it, sounds like.
it's like a comfortable shoe. I just slip my foot in and away we go. Well, I'd have both shoes, obviously. I wouldn't have one shoe because that'd be stupid, wouldn't it?
I mean, I'm not going to judge you. If you want to wear one shoe, that's fine. Whatever your process is, Matt, that's what you're here to talk about.
Yeah, he's just awfully eccentric, that bloke from England, isn't he?
I don't know. They're weird over there. They only wear one shoe. I don't know. Do you have something that you created that is your favorite and why?
Right. There's a few alike, actually. The one that stands out is I'd say it's probably Inside the Devil's Nest, which I did for John Durgin.
Oh, yeah, with D&T Publishing.
The funny thing about that one is, right, that nearly never happened, that cover, because it actually started out as a pre-made, to be honest, as well. And John saw it and immediately sort of fell in love with it. And then I believe he got it blown up and put on his wall in his living room or his office, maybe. And he's like, oh, I need this for a book I'm going to write. This is perfect. Is it right if I get it? I'm like, yeah, cool. It said, I think it was one of them cases where it matched the story he was going to write, like you was mentioning earlier. So I think it was actually one of those cases. But the thing about that cover was that was nightmarish in terms of its actual conception, and the actual work that went into it was just, it drove me up the wall. And the strange thing about it was it was one of the most simplest concepts. It's literally just obviously seen yourself. It's just a head popping out of water, some reeds in the background, bit of atmosphere. But that just took me days and days and days, to the point where I had to leave my computer at one point and leave my sort of desk because I was getting so pissed off because a certain part of it wasn't working for hours on end.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, seriously. I'm not even joking. I mean, my son wasn't here, thankfully, because I just wanted to swear a lot. Oh, I was incensed by it. This one part of it, the reflection wasn't working, and the head didn't look this way, and the head was too big. Now it looks too small. The water ripples are wrong. They're in the wrong place. Oh, I tell you, it was like problem after problem. And actually at one point said, that's it, I ain't doing it. I quit. And I thought, it's not something I do. I usually just like see a sort of art piece through to the end. Even if it ends up shit, I don't care. I just want to finish it. But this, it was kind of like, I was at the end of my tether. I was done with it. And I walked out of the room like 3 or 4 times. I'm thinking, right, deep breath. And I sort of sat myself down and I thought, right, get it together. And I just started nailing down, like I said before, just basically being patient.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something about that day, but I think it was just driving me mad that it was, for what seemed like for me a simple concept, it wasn't coming together, when I've done things that are much more complicated that have come together. And my brain wouldn't register that. It wasn't allowing me. It's just like, it's just a goddamn reflection, And it was just like, no, yeah, it's not working.
Wow, it really got under your skin.
Oh, it really did. Honestly, it was just crazy. I'd probably like a bit of a madman. You're probably thinking, just chill out, dude.
Did you throw your toys out the pram?
I did. I bloody did, I bloody did, missus. Oh, an ape shit, didn't I?
So what made you stick with it? Pure spite?
Yeah, just to piss myself off in a way. It's like, no, you're going to finish it. I sort of told myself off, really. I sort of disciplined myself, sat myself down on the sofa and said, right, get yourself together, Matt. Get back to the computer and sort it out. And believe it or not, as silly as that sounds, that's exactly what I did. And it came together. But the funny thing was, by the end of it, I didn't know if it was good or not because I spent so much time despising it. But then I released it and it got a very good reception. So I guess I'm grateful. I suppose there's lessons in that as well, about perseverance and
found its right home. So that's really cool.
It is very cool. Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm very grateful with it. But I think not just as a piece of art, I really like it, but I just think also the fact that I think I learned something that day about just learning when to just walk away, take a break and not being so dramatic about something. Maybe something I learned there myself. A personal lesson.
I love that. I think everybody listening can probably use that lesson for whatever it is that they're working on.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm sure everyone gets in that situation. If something becomes frustrating in a creative environment, and obviously I'm not a writer, but obviously there's writer's block and there's certain things in writing that you come up against a brick wall, and it can be frustrating. But I think ultimately the best advice is just to step away, sit down, and another thing is just don't look at it. And I think that might work the same for writing, I'm not sure, but another thing I was told is just stop looking at the artwork. If you rest your eyes from it, it's amazing. Even like 5 or 6 hours, or the next day you go back to it, you'll see things you didn't see because you've been staring at it so long. All the details are just blending into the main composition, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely good to try and take a step back and go back to something, because you can improve it massively just by doing that, by noticing things you hadn't seen before. You can miss what's going on in other areas because you focus on this bit, especially with that one, the Devil's Nest one. I was like focusing on this damn reflection for so long, and it's like, it's not white, the water ripples, I'm gonna have to redraw the water ripples, and then there's other things going on I hadn't even noticed. When you go back, it's all shit.
It's utter shit.
Everything's shit.
No, it came out wonderful. So I'm glad that you forced yourself back to the computer. I'm sure John is also glad you did that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I'm feeling too. But like you say, in all seriousness, I think it just taught me something about just, I say I'm not like a particularly aggressive person at all or anything like that. It's not like me to get irate easily, but for some reason that was really eating at me. And I think, the best advice, step away, come back, calm, fresh eyes and all that.
Do you do other forms of art outside of covers?
I've done a little film work, but I can't really talk about it because there's NDA stuff attached to it. But nothing. One's fairly cool, but to be honest, it's something, as I explained earlier, I think when I was saying that when I was a kid, I used to walk past the cinema and saw like the posters and stuff. I would definitely like to do more sort of work, I think, in that area as well. Just like, just push out there, just as like an ambition thing, if anything else. I mean, I love doing my book covers. It really is wonderful. But I wouldn't mind doing the odd movie poster for Shudder or something. That'd be cool.
That would be sick. Yeah.
If you're listening.
Shudder. We would all actually, everyone on this podcast would really like to work with you in some form.
Yeah.
Big fans. Sponsor us. Send us that yearly box you send people at Halloween. I would love that.
Oh, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Right? Maybe this is our chance.
I want some of those gift boxes people
Me too. Well, I hope that when you are able to talk about your secret project, that we see you on Twitter so we can celebrate with you.
Yes, most definitely. I shall post and be rather proud of them. Yeah, no, I do love doing my book covers though. I'm very fortunate and happy to be doing that.
So if we wanted to work with you, tell us what to do. What's your like preferred method of getting in touch with you, and what do you want us to come to the table with? I
think it's a bit like I explained earlier. I think just like an introductory, hi, I'm writing this, etc. Like I say, it's always great to have a blurb or a synopsis, anything like that, anything I can work on. Obviously, you need to know things like dates of completion and when these things need to happen, but ultimately just a sort of email saying what the book's about, when you need it for, and how much artistic freedom I may have. And if they actually have ideas themselves, or you, for example, would have an idea, we could obviously discuss that concept and see how we can sort of develop that one as well. So yeah, that's literally the process. It's very simple. I mean,
do you prefer that people use like your website form?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I get a lot of messages on Facebook and I get messages to my website more than anything. But yeah, usually it's just an email, and a job can be booked in like minutes, because if someone comes to you and says they actually like your work and they say, and you've got complete artistic freedom, and here's a synopsis, here's a blurb, what do you think? And I totally dig it and think I can work with that. And then before you know it, that job's sort of booked in. And then, like I say, it's the process of obviously whenever you've booked it in by, it might be a few months down the line or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's when you start doing all your mood board stuff. But yeah, it's just basically, I think, trying to gauge if you're happy to work together and, with each other and on the project itself. And if you think you can do it justice, really.
Awesome. It's very eye-opening. It's cool to pick your brain on that. Can you tell our listeners where we can find you online, like social media, like what your handles are and stuff?
Okay. You can find me at mattseffbarnes.com mainly. That would be my main website. At Twitter, I'm at mattseffbarnes, MattseffBarnes. Actually, had to look how to spell my own damn name. Brilliant.
Well,
I was looking on the screen there, just make sure I got it right. So, bloke can't even spell his name.
and we'll tag you as well. So I hope everyone will be able to find you, but
Thank you. And on Facebook, yeah, it's just Matt Seff Barnes. So it's all quite straightforward and rather uninteresting in terms of names, to be honest.
Hey, it makes it easy to find you.
Indeed.
So, as opposed to Brett, who has like a different handle on every platform and none of them are his name. So I'm always like, what frickin' handle am I using now?
Yeah. Yeah, because I saw it on Twitter as well. And I'm just, that's a different name, isn't it? And I was just, is that the same bloke? Am I just contacting someone I'm going to talk to who doesn't know I'm talking to him?
See, Brett, this is your wake-up call. Get it together.
Yeah, it's very disappointing, Brett. I must admit, mate.
Well, it has been so much fun chatting with you, chatting shit.
Chatting shit. I really enjoyed chatting shit with you too, Chelsea. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. And I'm excited to put this out in the world and have people meet you this way.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on as well.
Yes, you are welcome. All right. We will catch y'all later, Cutthroat Queens.
Waking up in a bath of ice, I'm a victim of an organ heist. You know it is true, you know this time you're never gonna get it. But you've already stolen